Hello, this is Susan Woods of Susan Woods Nonprofit Solutions. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the How to Start 501c3 Nonprofit Organizations online fundamental nonprofit class number 1 of 4. Again, welcome to the How to Start 501c3 Nonprofit Organizations class. It is the first of 4 classes in the Online Fundamental Nonprofit Classes series that walks you through the steps to start, fund, manage, and sustain 501c3 nonprofit organizations. I'm Susan Woods, and I would like to take a few moments just to share with you my educational credentials that qualify me to share this information with you. I've earned 3 nonprofit management certificates, one from Duke University, one from Winthrop University, and one from Wake Forest University. I believe wholeheartedly that it is crucial to continue your educational journey when you work in the nonprofit sector. So each time I have an opportunity to attend nonprofit management courses to earn the certificates, I take advantage of those opportunities. I'm also a graduate of Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I earned a Master of Business Administration degree, a Master of Arts in Teaching, and a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration. Susan Woods Nonprofit Solutions is the company that I started to help people learn about the nonprofit sector and how they can be a part of it. I provide in person nonprofit classes. On the first Saturday of each month, I teach the grant writing masterclass in person. And on the third Saturday of each month, I teach 1 of 4 of the fundamental nonprofit classes. Of course, with the pandemic, I have not been able to teach classes recently, but that is the normal schedule. I also facilitate online nonprofit classes. I facilitate them using this style of facilitation where it's self-paced, and I also facilitate live, if you will, online nonprofit classes where people can actually see me and I can see them as we facilitate or as I facilitate the class through the Zoom technology. I have a YouTube channel called Susan Woods Nonprofit Solutions where I upload information about the nonprofit sector and classes and tutorials. I provide 501c3 startup services, and I will tell you more about that in a few minutes. But I do help people start their own 501c3 nonprofit organizations across the United States. I also help people reinstate their 501c3 nonprofit organizations after they have lost their status due to not filing the appropriate Form 990 information return for 3 consecutive years. So, like I said, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the services that I provide in terms of starting or reinstating clients' 501c3 nonprofit organizations. I help community leaders start 501c3 nonprofits across the country. Since 2010, over 100 clients, as a matter of fact, as of today, 110 clients hired me to complete their 501c3 nonprofit application packets representing 22 states out of the 50 states. I use 20 methodical steps that I'm going to teach you how to use in this class to help clients across the country start or reinstate 501c3 nonprofits. Thus far, I have a 100% approval rating from the Internal Revenue Service for my clients. So, in other words, all of the clients who submitted their application packets that I completed for them earned their 501c3 status with a determination letter. A determination letter is a letter of approval from the IRS that states you have 501c3 status. The fee to complete customized 501c3 startup or reinstatement applications is only $1,200 up front. That is my fee to do all of the work required to complete the long version of the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption for my clients for startup or reinstatement purposes. So now that I have that behind us, it's time to keep moving toward why you are really here to complete the class. Here's a copyright notice regarding the information that I'm sharing in this class. I'm asking you not to share this information with anyone. All rights are reserved. No part of this document or this class may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, or otherwise, without prior written permission from the company, and the company being Susan Woods Nonprofit Solutions. Fundamental online nonprofit classes. Once again, you are taking the first of 4 fundamental online nonprofit classes, and I thank you so much for doing that. The first class is how to start nonprofits. Class number 2 is how to fund nonprofits. Class number 3, how to manage nonprofits. And class number 4, how to sustain nonprofits. I highly encourage you to take these classes in the order in which they are listed because each class builds upon the knowledge you gained from the prior class. So take them in the order that they're listed and you will benefit more that way. So let's dig in. How to start 501c3 nonprofit organizations. Overview. Getting started. Let's get started. So, to get started in this class and to be successful in this class, we have to first take a step back and talk about some basic information so that when we share information about actually completing the application packet and the documents that go along with it, then we will have some context to refer to. So, what is a 501c3 nonprofit? A 501c3 nonprofit organization is a corporation or other type of organization that is exempt from federal income tax under Section 501c3 of Title 26 of the United States Code. It is the most common type of the 29 types of 501c3 nonprofit organizations in the United States. It also offers a designation that allows the most, diversified revenue generation strategies. So what does that mean? I have the letter C highlighted in red because there are 29 types of 501c's nonprofit organizations in the United States. You want to apply for the 501c3 organization because you want to be able to take full advantage of a wide range of funding opportunities. And you also want to be able to tell potential investors that they can actually write off their investment in your organization. So that's a benefit. Those are benefits. So let me say that again. 2 things. Number 1, you can tell people who invest or make donations to your organization that they can write it off, and that's a big deal. The second major benefit is you can generate revenues to support your mission without paying taxes on those revenues. If they come from grants, if they come from donations, you can raise as much money or write as many grants as you need to generate revenues from those sources and not pay taxes on them. Now, there are some instances where you will have to pay taxes on revenues you generate, but it all depends on how you generate those revenues. IRS tax exempt purposes. The IRS has 8 purposes that they use to determine whether or not your nonprofit vision meets the requirements to be considered for 501c3 status. So you have to first go through these purposes, read these purposes, and understand these purposes first to determine whether or not you qualify to file a 501c3 application. Now, let me just say this. When I say 501c3 application, it is the same exact thing as I'm saying the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption. They are the same thing. I just use them interchangeably. So once again, the Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption is the same thing as a 501c3 application packet. So let's talk about the 8 tax exempt purposes. Your vision will have to fall into one, at least one of the 8 purposes that I'm about to share with you before you can even apply for 501c3 status. Number one, I'm sorry, 8 IRS tax exempt purposes. I'm getting too anxious. Number one, charitable. That's purpose number one. If your vision is a charitable vision of what you plan to do for the community, then you can apply for 501c3 status. So what I'm saying is, if your vision falls within one of these, at least one of the 8 purposes, you can apply for 501c3 status. It doesn't guarantee you will be approved, but at least you can get to first base and apply. Number 2, religious. Is your vision a religious vision? 3, educational. Do you want to provide some type of educational services? 4, scientific. 5, literary. 6, testing for public safety. 7, fostering national or international amateur sports competition. And 8, preventing cruelty to children and animals. If your vision for a 501c3 nonprofit organization falls within at least one of these 8 purposes, then that means you have permission to apply for 501c3 status. Now, you may have noticed, I'm sure you've noticed, the asterisk beside charitable. I placed the asterisk beside charitable because charitable is a broad purpose. Charitable has sub-purposes underneath it. So let's talk about those, because if you're looking at these 8 tax exempt purposes and you're saying, oh my goodness, my vision doesn't fit in under any of these, I can't apply for status. Wait just a minute. We're going to go to another slide that lists all of the subcategories of charitable. And I believe it's highly probable that your vision will fall under one of these categories. So let's look at the subcategories under charitable, because if your vision falls within one of those categories, then you can still apply. So charitable purposes. Relief of the poor, distressed, or the underprivileged. That's 1. Number 2, advancement of religion. Number 3, advancement of education or science. Number 4, erecting or maintaining public buildings, monuments, or works. Number 5, lessening the burdens of government. Number 6, lessening neighborhood tensions. Number 7, eliminating prejudice and discrimination. Number 8, defending human and civil rights secured by law. And number 9, combating community deterioration and juvenile delinquency. So now, looking at the 9 subcategories under charitable purposes, it's kind of hard to envision a vision that doesn't fall underneath either the charitable purposes or the other regular 8 purposes. It's kind of hard to believe that your vision wouldn't fall. So what I'm saying is, you should be able to at least apply for 501c3 status. So let's talk about some advantages of 501c3 status. Why would you even bother with this? What's the advantage of having a 501c3 status for your nonprofit organization? The organization is exempt from paying taxes on revenues generated. Like I said before, you can generate revenues. And if you do the long Form 1023 application for recognition of exemption, which is the only version that I use, then there's no cap on the revenues that you generate. If you choose to do the 1023 Easy Streamline application, there is a cap of $50,000 that you can generate for the first 3 years of operation. Investors can write off investments or donations per IRS guidelines. You have the right to solicit funds after you receive your charitable solicitation license from the Secretary of State's office in the state in which you operate. Your nonprofit organization has a legal life of its own, separate from your personal life or your personal bank accounts or anything. This is a separate organization. As such, it can have continuous existence after the original team leaves. So if you decide one day that you don't want to continue operating your nonprofit organization, you can allow someone to succeed you in that role and continue operating and providing the services. There is fiscal year flexibility to start and end in any month. You choose what month you want your fiscal year to end. Now, most people choose a fiscal year that's the same thing as the calendar year, which is January through December. But you make a decision on what your fiscal year will be. And you have to make that decision and select that decision when you're completing your application packet because the IRS uses the date or the month that you select as your fiscal year end to determine when your Form 990 information returns are due each year. Low postage rates depending upon bulk selection. Excuse me. So if you are the type of nonprofit organization that still uses the traditional mailing system and you want to mail a lot of documents out, you can have low postage rates. You qualify for that as a nonprofit organization. You simply have to pay a fee to complete an application in order to do that. And you have community goodwill by providing needed services. Everyone admires, I won't say everyone, but most people admire nonprofit organizations that are trying to do good work in the community, and that develops community goodwill. So those are the advantages of 501c3 nonprofit organizations, and you can probably think of even more that could be added to this list. Disadvantages of 501c3 nonprofit organizations. What are some disadvantages of earning the status? Well, mostly the disadvantages are around the fees that are required to establish a 501c3 nonprofit organization. The first fee is the Secretary of State application fees. You have to file your articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State office in the state in which you plan to offer services. And there is a fee to file an application to file your articles of incorporation. That's a lot. That's saying a lot. That's a lot of words there. But again, there is an application fee that you have to pay in order to submit an application to file your articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State office. And then there's a second fee with the Secretary of State office that you have to pay each year to have a charitable solicitation license. And that means the Secretary of State's office requires all organizations to have a charitable solicitation license that gives you the right to solicit funding. And that's any type of funding. That's donations, that's grants, that's any type of funding that you try to generate. You have to have a license to do that, and you have to pay for that license with the Secretary of State's office. If you generate revenues in any form without a license to do so in that state, you will be fined, or your organization will be fined by the Secretary of State's office. The IRS Form 1023 application and fee, well, you have to complete the application. The application transitioned to an electronic application effective January 31st, 2020. However, the IRS provided a grace period through April 30th, 2020 to use the e-filing system to submit your application packet. So if you are applying for 501c3 status after April 30th, 2020, then that means you have to submit your application using the pay.gov site. And the fee to have your application processed is $600. There is a lack of control due to the corporate status. When you earn 501c3 status, you have to have a board of directors. The board of directors governs the operations of your organization. So it's not your organization. You can't do just whatever you want to do. You have to follow the rules that you've established in your bylaws, and that the board of directors makes sure that you use those rules as a way that they govern your organization. So, in other words, you have no control. You can't just do whatever you want to do. You have a governing body called the board of directors. Again, you have little flexibility. You see, when you create a nonprofit organization and you complete the application packet to earn the status, then you are required by the IRS to provide those services that you stipulated in your application packet. And there's no flexibility to deviate from that very much. There's no flexibility to deviate from that very much. So the board of directors is responsible for making sure that you adhere and that you do exactly what you said you were going to do. External scrutiny from skeptical people. You're going to have people who are going to be a little leery about what you're doing, especially if you just show up in a community without communicating with them ahead of time. People are going to be a little concerned about what you're doing. If there's another organization already in place that's doing what you are planning to do, then that's going to be another hurdle to climb, because they're going to look at you as competition. And you are competition. Let's just be honest. Nonprofit organizations do compete against each other, not to provide services, because God knows we can't have enough good things happening in the communities. There's always a need to provide high quality services, but you're competing for money. So when the community sees another organization coming into the community, you're competing for money. And there could be some resentment there. So you have to be very, very careful about how you're going to navigate that. And then finally, it's time consuming to establish a firm foundation, because you have to establish a firm foundation upon which to build your organization. Now, I'm not talking about a nonprofit foundation, I'm talking about a foundation, a solid foundation upon which to build toward success. And it's time consuming to do that. It takes about 3 years to really get everything operating the way that you want it to operate. So those are the disadvantages of 501c3 status, that the way that I interpret disadvantages. Okay, so let's pause for a moment to do a brief knowledge check, just to see where you are, how you're feeling so far about what you're doing and what you've learned. What are the three most popular IRS purposes? Remember, we talked about purposes and we said that there are 8 purposes that the IRS uses to determine whether or not your vision meets the qualifications to apply for 501c3 status. So, what were the top 3? Well, the first one was charitable. Number 2, religious. And number 3, educational. So the top 3 most popular IRS purposes that people use to apply for 501c3 status are charitable, religious, and educational. Number 2, how many charitable purposes does the IRS allow? You remember the charitable purpose had the red asterisks to indicate that there were subcategories of purposes underneath charitable? Well, there are 9. There are 9 charitable purposes that the IRS allows. Number 3, what is a 501c3 advantage? What is one advantage to having 501c3 status? Although there are many advantages, in my opinion, I guess the one that sticks out is you can generate revenues and not pay taxes on those revenues in order to provide community services. I think that's fantastic. You don't have a limitation on the amount of revenues you generate to provide services. In other words, you can raise enough or generate enough revenues to meet a budget that you've created for your 501c3 status. I think that's wonderful. Now, if you use the streamlined Form 1023-EZ application to apply for 501c3 status, then you will have limitations on the amount of money you can generate because you can only generate $50,000 for the first 3 years that you're in operation. I do not complete that Form 1023-EZ application for my clients because I don't want them to have limitations on the amount of money they're able to generate for 3 years. What if someone decides to invest $50,000 right up front? Then you're limited. That's it. So I believe in completing the Form 1023 long version or standard version so that you don't have to worry about those limitations. What is a 501c3 disadvantage? Well, I guess most people look at the fees. They think fees are disadvantages to starting a 501c3 because you do have to pay the $600 to process your application packet, to have to pay $600 to the IRS to process your application packet, and that money has to come out of pocket. And then you have the fees to file your articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State's office, and the fees to get a charitable solicitation license from the Secretary of State's office. So you do have some fees that you incur up front. So most people look at those requirements as disadvantages. But this is a brief knowledge check, like I said, it kind of tests how you're feeling so far about what you've learned from the overview and the getting started section. I know some people don't really like overviews and getting started sections, but I believe that they are so important because they establishes a foundation for learning the information. You have to have this background knowledge to be able to successfully learn how to start a 501c3 nonprofit organization and how to complete the assignments. So thank you so much for your patience and indulging me for almost 30 minutes, getting you up to speed before we go into actually completing the assignments to earn your 501c3 status. So now we're going to take a break. Just take a short break, stand up, stretch, get a drink of water, whatever. But we're going to take a break and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about steps 1 through 5 of 20. There are 20 steps to starting a 501c3, remember? But we're going to talk about steps 1 through 5 when you come back from break. I'm Susan Woods of Susan Woods Nonprofit Solutions. Thank you so much for your time. You can visit www.trustsusanwoods.com for more information about this class and other classes that I facilitate. Thank you so much for your time.